You're sitting in a room with no windows. The access log on your second screen is routine until it isn't. Someone queried your real name at 6:47 this morning. Not your analyst ID, not your cover designation. Your name. The one on your birth certificate, the one your mother uses, the one that appears in exactly one database in this building. You look at the terminal ID. You issued that terminal 3 weeks ago. To the analyst, you just finished training. You sit still for 11 seconds. You know, because you built the logging architecture. That sitting still for 11 seconds, while looking at an access anomaly, is itself logged. Someone, somewhere, in a process running automatically in a system you helped design, has just recorded that you saw this and paused. You close the window. You open your queue. You begin to read. This is not a story about the people you watched for 20 years. This is the story of the moment you realized they never stopped watching you, and the person sitting 3 desks away who was reading everything. This is all of it. Fort Meade, Maryland, 2005. The building doesn't have its correct name on any public map. You learn this your first week alongside the cafeteria situation. The soup is genuinely good, which feels like an omen. You are 23. A mathematics degree from a state school in Virginia, a security clearance that took 18 months to process, and a commute you will describe to everyone you know for the rest of your life as just outside DC. Your job is to read intercepted emails, flagged by keyword algorithms, routed to your queue, reviewed for threat indicators, assessed, filed. 400 communications per day. Most are nothing. The nothings take 4 seconds each. The somethings you flag and send upstream to people whose names you don't know yet. 3 weeks in, you flag a communication. A phone number, a phrase, a pattern connecting to a dormant cell in Hamburg. You write your assessment in precise language. You send it up. 6 months later, a classified memo mentions 3 arrests in Hamburg. Significant intelligence yield. Your name is not in the memo. You read it at your desk on a Tuesday and feel something you don't have a clean word for. The feeling of a gear turning inside a machine so large you cannot see its edges. You are the gear. The machine worked. You go get soup. You are exactly where you are supposed to be. 2007. You find something you weren't looking for. Your access expands to phone metadata on a Monday with no ceremony. Pattern analysis, not content. The legal distinction is real and solid, and you read the framework and find it solid. You build your first network map in a week. 47 nodes, 3 countries, a cell rolled up in Jordan. You are excellent at this. The patterns speak to you the way numbers always have, directly, without ambiguity. 6 months in, running a routine internal audit on your own workstation logs, you find something that has nothing to do with your assigned work. Someone in your section is querying targets outside their authorized queue. 1 or 2 unauthorized queries per week, buried inside thousands of legitimate ones. The pattern is deliberate, spaced to stay just below the threshold that triggers automatic review. You know the threshold precisely because you helped set it during a working group 18 months ago. You sit with this for a full day. You say nothing. You add a secondary logging layer to your workstation, not visible to standard audits, capturing access patterns your colleagues don't know you're capturing. You begin building a second map. This one has no authorized target. This one lives entirely inside your own machine. You go home. Your girlfriend asks about your day. Quiet, you say mostly data. Both of those things are true. 2009. The shape of the enemy. Content access arrives and the volume changes overnight. Not hundreds per day, but thousands. You develop the ability to move through human communication the way water moves through a landscape, finding the low points, following the gradient, reaching the destination without announcing itself. Your ghost profile takes 4 months. access timing, query vocabulary, login rhythms, the specific way someone searches when they know what they're looking for versus when they're pretending to look for something else. The profile narrows to 3 people in your section. Then it narrows to 1. Her name is Chen, 6 years with the agency. Excellent record, higher clearance than yours. She eats lunch alone. You used to think this was introversion. You understand it differently now. You eat alone when you can't afford to say the wrong thing to the wrong person, and Chen cannot afford to say anything to anyone. She is not the leak. She is the handler. Someone reports to her. Someone inside this building, with access you haven't identified, is moving information through a channel that uses the agency's own collection infrastructure as a blind. You have found the pipe. You haven't found what is flowing through it or where it originates. You are now running an unauthorized counterintelligence operation inside the most surveilled building in the world. You do this in between your authorized work. Your authorized work metrics remain in the top 12% of your cohort. 2011. 6 arrests. You now decide what gets collected. The parameters are yours within established guidelines, and the guidelines are broad in the way frameworks become broad over time. Not through malice, but through the weight of genuine threats that required genuine responses. 2 years ago, you developed an asset, a foreign government official who approached through back channels, verified through 3 independent confirmation processes, producing intelligence that led to 6 major arrests over 18 months. Real arrests. Real threats interdicted. Your supervisor described the asset relationship as the most productive in the division's recent history. You find it buried in collection from 3 months ago, a routing path you would never have recognized before you built the ghost profile. Before you learned to read the architecture of concealment, the way you once read phone metadata. Chen and your asset have been in contact, not recently. Consistently, for 3 years through a channel that routes through your own collection infrastructure. You pull the thread. Every target your asset gave you was a rival of theirs within their own organization. Not a genuine threat to the United States. A competitor, an obstacle. Someone who needed to be removed, and who happened to also be removable through American legal mechanisms, if the right intelligence appeared at the right moment. 6 people are in federal detention. The charges are real. The crimes they committed are real. The reason those specific people were chosen out of all the possible targets in the world is not yours, was never yours. You were a precision instrument operated by someone with a different objective, and the instrument worked exactly as designed. You have 48 hours before your next scheduled debrief with the asset. You open a new document. You sit in front of it for a long time. 2012. Report or bury. The briefings come over 3 days. Prism Key Score. The program whose name you sign documents agreeing never to write. You initial the margins. You go back to your desk. The document you opened is still there. Still blank. If you report the asset, you report 3 years of compromised intelligence. You report 6 arrests built on a motive that wasn't yours. You report Chen, which means reporting that you identified a handler and conducted 4 months of unauthorized surveillance before saying anything. You report the secondary logging layer on your workstation, which is itself a violation of internal protocols, so specific they have numbers instead of names. If you bury it, Chen continues. The asset continues. The 6 people stay where they are for crimes they technically committed regardless of who arranged the intelligence. And the actual leak, the person reporting to Chen, the one you still haven't found, continues mapping the load-bearing walls. You type for 2 hours, not a report, a record, everything you found, fully documented, time-stamped, encrypted with a key that exists in your memory and nowhere else, stored on a drive in a location that is not on any agency server. You tell yourself it is insurance. You know what? It actually is. It is the thing you are doing instead of the thing you should be doing. And you are doing it because 20 years from now, you want something to exist that says you knew, and that you chose carefully, even if what you chose was silence. You close the document, you go home. You watch television for 3 hours. You don't know what you watched. 2014. You train the person who will come for you. You teach the new analysts to skim. Keyword flags, network mapping, target development, the legal framework, the difference between metadata and content, and why the distinction matters and how to articulate it clearly if you are ever asked. One of them is sharper than the others. He asks the question underneath the question, which is the sign you have always looked for. He finds patterns in data the way you did at level 1 before you knew what the patterns were part of. You spend 3 months with him. You teach him everything. The architecture of the logging systems, the audit thresholds, the secondary verification techniques you developed over 10 years of practical application. 3 weeks after he completes training, you issue him his terminal. You do this on a Tuesday. The next morning, at 6:47 a.m., his terminal queries your name. 2016. The system reads you back. Your supervisor calls you in 8 days after the query and closes the door. NSA Counterintelligence has opened a review, an access anomaly. The analyst claims a training exercise, wrong directory. You are contacted 4 days later. 2 counterintelligence officers. A room with no windows which strikes you as deliberate. They ask about your access patterns over 6 months. They ask about Chen, by terminal ID, not by name, which means they have the terminal ID but may not yet have the name, which means your ghost profile is further ahead of their investigation than you expected. Then they ask about the secondary logging layer on your workstation. They already know about it. You answer every question accurately. You omit nothing that was asked. You have been preparing for this conversation without knowing you were preparing for it. For approximately 7 years. Why didn't you report the anomalies you detected? The first officer asks. I was building a complete picture before escalating, you say. Standard analytical practice. He writes it down. The second officer looks at you for a moment without writing anything. We'll be in touch, he says. You drive home. You don't go to the drive. You don't check on the record. You make dinner and eat it and go to bed and lie in the dark with the precise awareness that the analyst you trained is currently doing to your files exactly what you spent a decade learning to do to other people's files. He is good. You made him good. You know exactly how long it will take him. 2017. The Pen. The second interview is not an interview. They know about the double agent. An independent review of the 6 arrests flagged sourcing irregularities. The thread was pulled by someone who didn't know what it was attached to, and it led to the asset, and the asset led to Chen, and Chen led upward. To a name you never found because you were looking in the wrong section. The actual leak is 3 levels above you. Someone whose access makes yours look like a reading lamp next to a searchlight. Chen is already gone. No announcement. The counterintelligence officer slides your ghost profile across the table. Everything you built, every unauthorized query, every secondary log entry, every node on the map you made of the person 3 desks away. It is thorough. It is accurate. It is a violation of 17 internal protocols, each of which has a number instead of a name. He places a second document next to it. A retirement processing form, dated today. You found real things, he says. The way you found them is a problem the agency would prefer to resolve quietly. He does not say, he does not need to. You built the system that taught you exactly how this sentence ends. You look at the form. You look at the ghost profile. You think about the record on the drive and the location that is not on any agency server. The one that documents everything, including the things they haven't found yet, including Chen's routing path and the asset's 3-year operation and the name of the person 3 levels above you who is the actual load-bearing wall. You pick up the pen. Your hand doesn't shake. You sign. You initial the margins. You slide it back across the table. You stand up. You say thank you. You walk out. Parking garage, B2, 2017. The processing takes 4 hours. 2 clearance reviewers. Documents acknowledging that your obligations do not end with your employment. You sign everything accurately, having read everything carefully, having chosen your words on every form with the precision of someone who spent 20 years understanding that words on forms are the most permanent things a person can produce. Your supervisor shakes your hand in the hallway. He says the work mattered. He says you were one of the best. He does not mention the second room. You do not mention the drive. You take nothing from your desk. There was never anything on your desk that belonged to you. In the parking garage on level B2, you sit in your car for a long time. The drive exists. The retirement agreement you signed does not legally require you to destroy it. You chose those words carefully before signing, because you always choose words carefully. And you had 20 years of practice choosing them in rooms with people who also choose words carefully, and you are still, by any honest measure, better at it than most of them. You start the car. You drive home. Your sister is coming for dinner. She brings wine. She laughs the way she has laughed for years now, easily, without the thing underneath it that used to be there. You pass the bread. You refill her glass. The evening is warm and ordinary and real. At 9:47 p.m., your phone shows a number you don't recognize. You let it ring. It rings again at 10:03. Same number. You look at it for the 4 seconds it takes you to understand what category this call belongs to. Not who. The who changes, but the category is one you know. Someone found the record. Or someone wants to know if it exists. Or someone wants to confirm that you understand the precise boundaries of the agreement you signed in a room with no windows this morning. You turn the phone face down. You pour the last of the wine. Your sister is telling a story about something ordinary, a neighbor, a parking dispute, something that will resolve itself by next week and leave no file anywhere. You listen completely. The part of your brain that has spent 20 years filing things files nothing. The phone stops ringing. Outside, in a building without its correct name on any public map, a room with no windows contains screens that contain the private communications of people who do not know they are being read. Someone is at those screens right now, someone young, precise, the best their supervisor has seen in a decade. They are moving through other people's lives at 4 seconds each, flagging the somethings, closing the nothings, feeling the gear turn inside the machine. They have not yet found the question underneath the question. They will. The drive still exists. The phone stays face down. Your sister laughs. You stay at the table, in the warmth, for as long as you possibly can.